One of the big things that I didn't like about Christopher Nolan's new film, The Odyssey, are the scenes with Calypso. So Calypso was played by Charlize Theron, and I thought this was a brilliant casting choice. In the mythology, Calypso is a nymph, she's a goddess, the daughter of the Titan Atlas, and in the war between the Titans and the Olympian gods, Calypso sides with the Titans, and when they lose, she is exiled by Zeus, the king of the gods, to Ogygia. This is an island miles away from civilization. People used to think it was in the Atlantic Ocean, and in Homer's Odyssey, Hermes flies to it and complains about how barren and how long the journey is to get there. Odysseus arrives on Ogygia shipwrecked, having lost all his men, and Calypso takes him in, gives him as much food and sensual pleasure as he could possibly want, and then it's only after a long period of time that Odysseus has enough and wants to return home. In Nolan's film, a strange thing is done where two distinct moments in Homer are blended into one, Calypso and the island of the Lotus Eaters. In the film Calypso, Charlize Theron feeds Odysseus the lotus flower, which lulls him into a forgetful, lethargic and numbed out state where he can't remember his past experiences. In the actual Odyssey, the scene with the lotus flower and the lotus eaters takes place miles away from Calypso on Jerba Island in Tunisia. Odysseus never actually eats the lotus flower, but his men do, and so Odysseus has to go on shore and drag his weeping men back onto the boats because they've eaten the flower and they don't want to continue on the journey back home. This scene in the book inspired a great poem by the English poet Alfred Lord Tennyson, The Lotus Eaters, and this is all about leisure and potentially recreational opium use. It raises the question whether calm and peace, seeking these things out, is just as worthy as pursuing a life full of meaning, suffering and adventure. It's fine that Nolan blended these two scenes, but it does a bit of damage perhaps to the character of Odysseus as portrayed in Homer, because it makes him seem as someone who's an unwitting victim of Calypso instead of a person with agency who actually enjoys consciously his time with Calypso on her island. There's a great line in ancient Greek explaining the reason why Odysseus eventually wants to leave. It's epe uketi endane nymphe, which means since the nymph was no longer pleasing him. The key word here is uketi, which means no longer in ancient Greek, and this suggests that for a long time Odysseus had been enjoying his time with Calypso in her bed and eating her food, but now no longer it's pleasing to him. Scholars argue that Odysseus' time on Calypso's island is the greatest test of his mental character in the whole of the Odyssey. He's far removed from civilization, out in the Atlantic, at the far end of the earth, similar in that sense to paradise, to Elysium. He's with a beautiful goddess with whom he has a relationship with in a natural paradise. And this is his greatest and biggest psychological test because he has to resist the idea of immortality and a life of paradise with Calypso and instead return home, return to mortal boundaries and a mortal existence. For me, this feeds into what many other people have talked about regarding Christopher Nolan's film The Odyssey, that he makes Odysseus too much of a good man, whereas in Homer, Odysseus is quite morally vague, he's complicated, as Emily Wilson translates him to be, or shifty and wily, polutropos in ancient Greek. What do you think about this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.